have to, because that's how family actually gets.
Listen to me. I don't have to. He
Chrissy,
has to. That's your son.
No,
He has to. I don't
you
have
have to remember.
This
Once
is a choice.
you and him get married, and really, as far as I'm concerned, y'all are married, okay? And if you're part of him, okay, and that means he's definitely me, that means that you're part of me.
The atmosphere in the room was almost suffocating, with tension building rapidly as Chris Lampkin and Jim Jones stood face to face, emotions simmering just below the surface. Friends and family members watched uneasily, uncertain whether to intervene or step back, as the situation grew more volatile. What had started as a minor disagreement between the two had quickly spiraled into something far deeper, a conflict charged with unresolved issues and old grievances that neither of them had ever fully addressed. Jim, known for his quick temper, appeared to be reaching a breaking point. In contrast, Chrissy was strong-willed and unyielding, her stance reflecting a refusal to submit to his anger. Her expression was a mix of defiance and disappointment, emotions that resonated with everyone watching the tense standoff. "You don't get to treat me like this," Chrissy's voice shook slightly, though she struggled to keep her tone calm and composed. "Enough is enough," Jim, her words hung in the air, the firmness of her conviction unshaken despite the turmoil inside. But Jim's reaction was immediate and cold, his voice laced with irritation. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he retorted, moving toward her with a dismissive scowl. His towering figure cast a shadow as he closed in, each step underscoring the intensity of his words. With everyone watching, Jim suddenly lifted his hand and, in a single swift motion, struck Chrissy across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the room, silencing the murmur of voices as those around froze in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Chrissy stumbled backward, her hand reflexively reaching up to touch her cheek, which stung with the force of the blow. Her eyes blazed with a mixture of anger, shock, and sadness as she met Jim's gaze, but she did not look away. "You've crossed the line, Jim," she said quietly, her voice steady and resolute, though her words were filled with pain. Beneath the hurt, though, there was an underlying strength of force that had been building within her, waiting for this very moment. Breaking the silence, Jim's son, who had been watching the conflict unfold from the sidelines, stepped forward. Determination hardened his expression as he addressed his father. "Dad, this is enough," he said firmly. There was a quiet strength in his voice, a conviction that he wasn't afraid to challenge Jim's actions. "This isn't how you treat the people you love." Jim's expression hardened, irritation flickering across his face as he looked at his son. "Stay out of this," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You don't know what you're talking about." Unfazed, his son met his gaze, standing his ground. "I know more than you think," he replied, his voice unwavering. "We all deserve better than this. You can't just keep pushing people around." The tension between father and son was palpable, a confrontation fueled by years of pent-up frustration. Jim scoffed, anger and embarrassment visible in his expression. "You think you're in a position to lecture me," he sneered. "You think you understand respect," but his son held his ground, his disappointment and sadness evident in his face. "This isn't about being right, Dad. It's about doing what's right," he said softly but firmly. "We can't keep living like this, always on edge, afraid of what you'll do next." Chrissy found herself drawing strength from his words, her own resolve hardening as she spoke up. "He's right, Jim," she said, her voice steady but resolute. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about setting boundaries and finding a way to move forward, one that doesn't involve fear and manipulation." Jim's face twisted with a mix of anger and confusion, his pride wounded. "You think you can tell me how to run my own life?" he demanded, disbelief coloring his words. Chrissy met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "This isn't about control, Jim. It's about respect, which goes both ways. You can't continue treating people like this." Her words were calm, yet each one carried a weight that cut through the tension in the room. She knew that standing up for herself and her family was necessary, even if it meant confronting Jim directly. Taking a steady breath, Jim's son stepped forward once more. "Dad, we're not going to stand by and let you hurt us anymore," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "You need to make a choice. Either you change or you leave." Jim's face flushed, and for a moment it seemed as if he might lash out again. His fists clenched as he weighed his options, the anger in his expression giving way to something more vulnerable, an emotion he rarely let show. Finally, with a mixture of defeat and bitterness, he turned toward the door. "Fine," he muttered. "If that's what you want, "I'll go without another word." He walked out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. As the door closed, Chrissy and Jim's son exchanged a look of both relief and sadness. They had made a stand, one that was long overdue, and though the outcome was uncertain, they felt a newfound sense of hope. The silence that filled the room was a shared understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that they had taken the first step toward a healthier future. Later that evening, as Chrissy and Jim's son sat together, the events of the day replayed in their minds. Chrissy broke the silence. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked, her voice tinged with both hope and trepidation. Her son considered her question carefully. "Maybe," he replied. "But if he does, it has to be on different terms. We can't go back to the way things were." His tone held a quiet conviction, a determination that the family dynamic had to change if they were ever to truly move forward. Over the next few days, Chrissy and her family worked together to rebuild their lives, establishing a foundation of trust, respect, and mutual understanding. They focused on setting boundaries, determined to create a home where everyone could feel safe and valued. Although the trauma of the recent confrontation lingered, they found solace in each other's support, and this solidarity became the cornerstone of their healing process. Jim's absence gave everyone time to reflect on the toll his actions had taken on the family, but as weeks passed, he unexpectedly returned, though with a humbler demeanor, the usual arrogance replaced by a quiet remorse. Chrissy and his son allowed him back, but only with the understanding that things had to be different, that this time, respect and accountability would replace past patterns of control and aggression. The journey toward healing was gradual, marked by small steps and occasional setbacks. Jim had to confront long-standing issues, ones he had avoided for years. Through therapy and self-reflection, he began to understand the impact his behavior had on his family and to acknowledge the damage his actions had caused. Months passed, and the family began to rebuild their bonds, learning to communicate openly and without fear. They shared their struggles, laughed together, and supported one another, creating a renewed sense of connection and love. Chrissy's resilience and her son's quiet strength had inspired everyone, setting an example of courage that echoed through their lives. Jim's transformation was a long, challenging process, but he made genuine progress. He learned to listen, to accept his family's needs, and to recognize the importance of love built on trust rather than control. For Chrissy and his son, his growth symbolized a new beginning, a chance to move forward without the shadows of past hurt. In the end, they emerged stronger, a family united by both their hardships and their healing. Chrissy and her son had paved the way, showing that standing up for oneself and setting clear boundaries could create a space where everyone felt valued and respected. They knew that family wasn't about domination or submission, but rather about creating an environment where each person could grow and flourish. Their journey had been difficult, but it had brought them closer, guiding them toward a future defined by understanding and compassion. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, knowing they could overcome anything with each other's support.